Okay, I'm going to try my best not to get into the feedback loop. If I step too far forward, it's going to scream, so I'll try and not step above that bar. All right, so like Kenzie said, I'm Director of Education. Actually, my title is technically Director of Fun, is what we run with, and I'll explain why. I prefer the Director of Fun title, but of course, when I come up here, it sounds a lot easier if I just say Director of Education. So I'll get into explaining it. Inertia is actually a project I've been working on with a couple students for almost 2 years now, approaching 2 years, and we're all about education in especially underserved schools here in Escambia County. So for those of you who don't know, I'll dive a little bit into the numbers. Escambia is not among the top performing counties in the state, to say the least. It has historically not been very far above the 25% line. We have a lot of troubling schools here in Escambia County, and that's due to a number of reasons. As most educations are, it's tied to primarily poverty. High poverty areas tend to perform less exceptional on the FSA scores, and so we're trying to address that. So my clicker may have stopped working. There we go. Okay, so our vision is to ensure every child is given the opportunity to realize their full potential. So our vision and our mission are two separate things. And anyone who's run a nonprofit or worked in one knows that usually your vision is your long-term goal, what you want to accomplish as a general goal of your organization. And your mission, which I'll explain in a second, is more your short-term goal, what you're working on right now. So we actually call Inertia here in Pensacola, Inertia Pensacola. It's made much more local. We started out here locally, we've been working here locally, and then we plan to go outside of that. So the larger brand is Inertia, but we focus specifically as Inertia Pensacola, because our mission is to elevate our community through education and to make Escambia County a better place for all to live and learn. This is left fairly broad for a reason. So the primary activity that we do are STEM programs in schools. It's in that 2:30 to 3:45 range, right after school lets out, where they have a little bit of time to get a snack, to go to after-school care, or have some kind of supervisor while the rest of the students are loaded onto buses, and then they come to our program from 2:30 to 3:45. And that's for a number of reasons. So 3 of our objectives are: 1, to combat juvenile delinquency and detention rates. So in that 2 to 5 o'clock range in the day is when most juvenile crime happens. And that's because they're out of school, so they're not under a teacher's supervision, and their parents aren't home, or their other family members aren't home, so they don't have parental supervision either. And so that's when the majority of juvenile crime happens, and that's why we run our program specifically in that time range. And then we have the parents can pick them up after that. Our second one is to create mentorship opportunities. So all of our programs actually run entirely on volunteers. Some of them, a majority of them from campuses like UWF or Pensacola State College. And then we're also looking into getting high schoolers to come and teach the elementary school level, because we work right now in 3rd through 5th grades with plans to expand outside of that. And then our third, we're trying to increase the test scores. So we're trying to increase performance inside these schools. And that's our main objective, and that's the main metric that we run by, is where can we get these FSA scores above where they are now to increase proficiency. To give context, some of the schools that we have here in Escambia County have less than 25% success rate in math at some grade levels, which is astonishing. That means almost 4 in 5 of those children in that 3 to 5 range come out not knowing how to do math at their grade level. And that's due to a number of reasons. Our purpose is to educate, ignite, elevate. So we have a longer mission outside of just our vision and our mission, and that's to educate the youth, ignite the mind, and elevate the community. That's our 3 objectives outside of just our mission. And so everything we do is justified by those 3 things. If we're not doing those 3 things, then we're not doing our vision, our mission, and we're not implementing our core values properly. And then our main brand right now is Together We Empower. That's what we put on everything that we put out into the world, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to empower these students, we're trying to empower these communities that are struggling with this issue. So the structure of the organization, we have these 3 main wings of the organization, as most nonprofits do. We have our board, which I myself am a member of. We have an advisory council, which is made up of community leaders and other figures that can help us. And then we have our leadership team, which are the people who handle the day-to-day. I also am on the leadership team. So our main 3 founders, the 3 people who started this, myself, I'm actually vice president, and I'm the director of education, or director of fun for the kids. We have Basil Clover, who's our president and executive director, so he handles most of the day-to-day operations, overseeing and administrative tasks. And then Marcus Jackson, who was our 3rd founder back a year and a half ago, and he's our treasurer as well as a board member. Our advisory council is comprised of different individuals that we think can help us succeed. So all of our team are actually either our students now or recently graduated students. Some of our members actually have continued on to law school and have left us for the time being, and we're very happy for them. Unfortunately, that leaves us without their wonderful skills, but we're happy for them. So we have experienced educators as well in our advisory council, because although I've been in education personally for a while and some of our other team members have lots of experience in education, we want to get some verified feedback from educators and administrators within the school system that we're in, because without their assistance, we're not going to know how to best serve them and how to get those FSA scores up. So we have some of those on our advisory council as well, and then business and nonprofit professionals. People who have gone through the system before, know how to operate, know how to handle the legal aspects of running an organization, the financial aspects of running an organization, and ensuring that we can continue to operate on what we need to work on. So experience and partners, this is a rather long list. This is all of the individuals who have either partnered with us directly or for at least one of our team members have experience working with or for, particularly in education. So me, for example, we have the Institute for Human and Machine Cognition here downtown. Multiple of our team members either have worked there in the past, and some of them still work there today. I specifically worked there and actually taught high school level how to make autonomous boats. So that's one of my aspects of education experience. So some of these are some of our partners now and sponsor what we're doing right now. Members of Impact 100, for example, have been great community sponsors in working with us and giving us feedback on how to best structure our organization in order to compete for Impact 100. So it's been incredible to have all of this community support. So how we operate, our main operation, we've kind of got it down to a science, how we work to improve the state of the schools. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from the principals, vice principals, after-school program managers, educators, students, volunteers, everyone. We survey everyone to get feedback, and we've got it down to this process, and this is what works. So it starts at the very top with our conversation with educators. So I go out and meet with either the principals, or the vice principals, or the science and math teachers in a school and figure out what they need. So this is taking data from the FSA scores, this is taking data from their in-class assignments and quizzes, and this is me coming back with curriculum that works for them. So that's what I do as Director of Education. I work immediately and directly with the schools to come up with what we can do to best serve them. And then I go to the second step. I prepare the curriculum. So we come up with what activities, hands-on activities in particular, we can run with those kids that will get them to better understand whatever topic it is. So some of the activities we run, one of our most popular is in chemistry. It's called household chemistry. It's things like you might expect, like baking soda and vinegar, your typical ones. Elephant toothpaste is in there, Coke and Mentos, and then some other chemistry experiments that those kids can do directly with their hands. Something hands-on, something tangible. That 3rd through 5th grade range, and usually most young students work primarily with that tactile learning. They need something physical to interact with to really grasp a concept and to internalize it. And so everything we do is those hands-on activities, and it takes a while to come up with them, but we think they work really well. We then go to volunteer recruitment. So like I said, we run entirely on volunteers. Many of them are also students themselves, because one of the things we find, what we're really doing different than other organizations here, is we're utilizing students that need those volunteer hours. Whether they're education students at our college campuses, or whether they're high school students that are competing for Florida Bright Futures. They have a need to get volunteer hours, which is what we can provide them. And a lot of them want to work with these younger students. They're their younger siblings, their younger siblings' friends. And we find that they tend to listen to older students better. We kind of have this students teach students mentality. We take the students from above and teach the ones below, because they tend to listen more. And that's due to a number of reasons. One of it is age. Those young students tend to listen to older students more. They're closer in age, they have a similar experience, and in a lot of cases, our volunteers grew up in the same schools or the same communities as the students that we're teaching. So they tend to relate to them a lot more. And that's where we create those mentorship opportunities, one of our 3 main objectives. So we recruit our volunteers and then we train them. We show them how to do the curriculum that we're going to be doing in the classroom. We show how to interact with the kids, how to interact with the teachers. We get them prepared, whether or not they're education students, to know how to interact with people and relate to them on a really personal level while still teaching them STEM. The next thing we go to is doing the actual workshop. So we kind of have a couple different events that we do right now. Our primary event is that workshop, the 2:30 to 3:45 range, where we come in, we take a group of about 50 students at both of the schools that we're in right now, and we teach them one of our curriculum, whether it's biology, chemistry, whether it's algebra, geometry. We come in and teach them for that hour and 15 minutes, and then we have another program. What we like to do is involve the families and the parents in order to get them more involved in their children's education, which is a difficult thing to do in these communities. most of them work till very late, and that's part of why that juvenile crime is so high in that time range, is because they're left alone at home because many of their family members are working to make ends meet. But what we do is we do a family night. We actually used to call it parent night, and one thing that we realized, and one thing that a lot of people don't realize here in Escambia County, is a lot of these homes don't have your typical parental structure. They don't have a mother and a father. Sometimes it's living with grandparents, living with aunts and uncles, living with older siblings even in some cases. Some of them actually in Escambia County, we have a very high proportion of students who are homeless. They're classified Title X because they don't know where they're going to sleep every night. And so we realized that we can't call it parent night because that excludes a lot of these kids. So we call it family night. And it's not necessarily family members. It could be friends. It could be unrelated people that they just happen to be around a lot. People from other schools even, that have known them for a while and lived in that same community and had the same experience they do. And we bring them in and we have the kids run through, if it's their parents or their grandparents or a relative, they have them run through the workshop with them. The kids teach the curriculum, not us. Because they've gone through it, they've learned it at least once. We read it to them at least once, and then they come and teach it to their families. And that really creates a stronger connection. And like all things in education, if you have to teach it, you generally know it a lot better. Because you have to know it in order to answer questions and to teach it really well. And so that also solidifies the education part of our programs in this children's line. And then we take metrics. So like I said earlier, we survey everyone involved. Our volunteers are surveyed, our students are surveyed. We're actually moving, instead of just surveying the students in our programs, to surveying the entire school, so we can get a better heartbeat on how well we're doing in relation to the rest of the school. We survey the school administrators, the ones who I actually work with to come up with the curriculum, to see that they're satisfied with the program and how we've been running it. And we survey as well all of those family members that come on family nights. So we give them surveys, because the one perspective that we don't have is how are those students doing at home. We know how they're doing in school, we know how they're doing in our workshops, but we don't know how they're doing at home. And that's where the real impact is going to be made. If they're talking about STEM more, if they're talking about the activities that we've done in the classroom more, then we're having a positive impact on their home life. And that's really what we're aiming for. So we take all of these metrics and then we generate reports from them. Very detailed analyses of what curriculum are working, what activities are working, what are students really latching onto, how do they perceive STEM or science or math or anything in particular in society. So that's one of our metrics, is social context, how they view how important STEM is in getting a successful career, or how they view how important it is in just living their daily lives. So we generate these really fine detailed reports from a lot of data, and then we improve our programs. So we come back to that very beginning, then we go back to the educators and we have a report for them and say, this is what's working, this is what isn't working, this is what they like in the classroom, this is what they don't. So that we can improve our programs, we can get feedback from them on what they're looking for, given that feedback, and then we let them know. Maybe they can improve their classroom experience as well. And then we give them an end-to-end improved classroom experience all day. So where does Inertia operate? So I said we serve underserved schools, but we actually have more particular metrics for the ones that we're looking for. So our primary metric for determining a school that we need to work in is if it's D or F rated by the Florida Standards Assessment. It used to be FCAT, now we're moving to the FSA, but it's a kind of a conjoined system at the moment while we transition. But either way, every school in Florida is given a D or F grade if they're underperforming on those metrics. So we have a lot of schools that are A, B, and C in Florida. We have a lot of really successful schools. Even in this area, even in this county, we do have so many schools. But a lot of the schools in this county have D or F grades. It used to be a lot more. It's actually improved over the last few years, up to we're now at about 6 schools that are really at that red line. And the thing about that line is that if you're a D school for 3 years, or an F school for 2, your school is entirely restarted. So essentially they have a third party come in, they relieve certain teachers based on certain metrics of performance, and they essentially restart the entire school. Start it from day one. And so imagine this actually happened to one of our schools. This is why we started working with them. They actually had to remove 7 of their teachers and move them to another location. And they only had 20 teachers. It's more than a third of their teachers. So imagine coming to school on the 15th of December, coming back on the 5th of January, and 1 in every 3 teachers that you see in that day are someone you've never met before. And the teachers that you have good relationships with are now gone. So this is a really risky process. It's very damaging to these students, because they come back, they see that they're in an unfamiliar place, and they stop learning. And they start concentrating on how can I build relationships with these people I've never met before. And we want to keep that away from these students. We want them to stay in the environments that they're already in, so that's why we address those schools. The other one is identified as Title I. So like I said, we work a lot in high poverty areas because that's where these problems tend to come from. And so all of these Title I schools, or schools that are specifically in high poverty areas and receive special funding, those are the schools that we also target once we're done with those D and F schools. And in Stanley County, you'd be surprised, about 80% of our schools are Title I. There are very rare few that aren't. So we have a lot of ground to cover. So once we're done, we're focusing primarily on these D and F schools, but once they're solved, there's still a lot of work to do to lift these areas out of poverty. And then the last one we focus on, we haven't used this metric yet because we haven't gotten to a point where it's been as critical, but we do also look at the ratio of Title X and free and reduced lunch students. So Title X, the metric is based on free and reduced lunch as well as some other things. And so if we have a high proportion of Title X students, then we know that that school also is in trouble and is going to need some extra help, because these students that are coming to school, like I said, they don't know where they're going to sleep that night. And that weighs on you a lot. It weighs on these students a lot. They don't care about doing some chemistry activity. They don't care about doing some algebra assignment. They have a lot bigger problems to worry about. And so those are some more of the schools that we concentrate on. So that's pretty much an overview of the organization. Of course, we have a question time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. If you want to contact us, we're pretty much the same on every website. It's all Inertia Picola. That'll change. Like I said, Inertia is not meant to be just here locally. That's just where we're focusing right now. We actually have plans to go to other locations, so that will change. But Inertia Picola, if you want to follow what we're doing and get more of an introduction to the rest of our team, there's actually 7 of us right now on our leadership team that do the day-to-day here in Pensacola. A lot of them couldn't be here. Like I said, most of us are students or have recently been students and are busy with work or school or what have you. Fortunately, I could be here today, but the rest of our team could not. And that's my presentation. Thank you all very much. We'll go to Dr. Rinaldi real quick. Sorry. Yes. So volunteers, it kind of fluctuates based on semester. Like I said, a lot of them are students, so their schedules change. But we have about 50 volunteers that regularly come back. Ones that are actively involved from week to week because their schedules allow for it. There's a good core group of about 15 that are regularly attending. But all in all, we have about 50 to 60 that are signed up. And then the number of students that we impact, we have, based on the number of students that we have strictly in the classroom, this semester will be around 110 to 120. And that's just in 2 schools, and that's the same students coming back. So we're actually moving, what we'd like to do is have different students coming multiple times throughout the week so we can reach the highest number of students. Ideally, every student in 3rd through 5th grade. And then we're going to 2nd and 6th after that. So the number of impacts we've had to date, I believe the number is around 700. Of interacting with the same students or different students. And that's not just at the schools. We've actually been asked to Boys and Girls Club have us run a program over last winter break. Over this summer, we'll actually be working with a 3rd school that wants us to come run one of their programs, West Pensacola. The 2 that we're in right now are Oakcrest and Ensley Elementary Schools. So Ensley Elementary School is up towards UWF campus, and then Oakcrest is out in West Pensacola. Frequency, so we come back right now at the school this semester. We'll be coming back once every week, every Wednesday at Ensley Elementary for the beginning of this semester. And then the 2nd school, Oakcrest, wants us to come twice a week at the end of the semester. So what the schools are telling us is that they really need help on the FSA scores. And so Oakcrest Elementary in particular, what they want us to do is come back in every week, twice a week, leading up to the FSA scores to give them that final push until they take the FSA tests. Because that's what they really need to improve on. That's where they're struggling with 30% or less proficiency in math and science and reading. So we're going to be coming back at the end of the semester and really hitting hard, and more than likely that's how we're going to operate in the future. Coming back very regularly, leading up to FSA scores every year to try and give them that last boost. Any other question?
I have 2 questions. First, it's all your criteria that you work with. Who makes a determination to bring you into that school?
So once we've identified schools that need us, so we have our D and F schools, those are our schools at the top of our list. And then the rest of our list is Title I. So we usually either will approach the school directly, or actually now that we've been working in these schools for about the last year and a half, schools come to us. So the 3 or 4 schools that we're probably going to expand to in the next year are schools that saw what we did. We actually were on the Pensacola News Journal a while ago, about a year ago, and then about 6 months ago, WAR did a story. And so we're getting out into the community through these different means, and they're hearing about what we do. And these schools that are struggling that are in the same situations are now reaching out to us to go explain to them.
So that would be the principal of the school that would get the call?
It's usually the principal or the vice principal. At Oakcrest Elementary, the person we primarily work with is they have a specific designated after-school coordinator. He coordinates all the after-school programs, and then they'll reach out to us. So it's kind of different people based on the school, but usually the principal and vice principal.
How are you funded?
So we're funded through a couple different means. A lot of the initial work, of course, with any nonprofit or any business, there's some initial investment. So our core team members and all of our board members have signed the active board member pledge, and we all put in a certain amount of money. So all in all, we put a couple $1,000s ourselves, what we pulled together from our team. And then some other funding sources, I can't speak too much on it, but we are seeking certain grants. And we're hopefully going to get one of those grants very soon that will allow us to expand very quickly. We've also had a lot of community donations, so we've raised all in all about $3,000 from the community. We opened up our donations actually on the day of the WAR story, and just in that week we got about $2,000 worth of donations from various people in the community, from parents, from educators themselves, and then from our sponsors and our advisory council members. Yes? Yes, so I Love Science, it's kind of had an interesting history. So we actually work with a lot of the people that were at some point involved with I Love Science. So over the course of Pensacola Mess Hall, Megan Platt was involved with it at some point. IHMC, other people from IHMC were involved with it, and we work with them a lot too, since some of our team members still work at IHMC. And then some other community members that were involved. So I Love Science has kind of evolved over time. It had a good initial push of those 3 or so years that it was operating very regularly. It's kind of slowed down in its growth. One of the challenges that we've heard this from a lot of people, is that they've tried this before. Almost everyone we talk to will say, we've done this before and it didn't work. Or we tried this and we couldn't sustain it. Or we tried this and no one was interested in actually doing it. We hear that almost every person we talk to says that to us. And this is coming from all over the community, from organizations out in the community, from our college campuses, to the Mess Hall themselves, I Love Science. All of these programs have had struggles in getting this program to continue to run in schools. I think that we've found a good formula to make it work, because so far we haven't run into those sustainability problems, and that's where all that community support is coming from. So I Love Science, and there's actually a couple different programs in the community that we work with. So those programs that are still running, we're actually very closely partnered with them. We share curriculum, we share education experience, and we share resources in order to build the best programs, because we're all in this together. None of us are competing. That's the last thing that we want to do, is compete with anyone in the community. So we're partnered with almost everyone around us and anyone in education because of that. And I saw two different things, and we're going to move back first. So we actually, interestingly enough, we just had a board meeting last night, so I can answer that question more in detail. We have an expansion plan. We've had a 5-year expansion plan to grow to all of those 6 schools that are currently at our red line, all of those schools that are D and F. We plan to expand with those in the next 2 years, is ideally where we want to be. And some of those schools have already reached out to us and want us to come out, so we already have a good pathway to do that in the next 2 years. And then by the end of about 5 years, we're looking to be in 12 schools. So that's our 6 schools that are D or F, and actually when I had a note onto this, it's my philosophy and the philosophy of everyone on our team that a nonprofit should be self-defeating, because a nonprofit is rallied around a particular mission. And when your mission is accomplished, you shouldn't have any purpose to exist. So while we do have a 5-year expansion plan, ideally, this is the hope, we kind of defeat ourselves, because that's what we should be doing. If we're still dealing with the same 6 D or F schools in 5 years, then we're not doing our jobs right. We haven't done what we set out to do because they're still struggling. So we hope to be in 12 schools by the end of 5 years, and that's schools that may end up not even being in our metrics anymore, because we've worked with them for so long and hopefully gotten to a point where they don't need us. But that's our plan. Yes?
So you talked quite a bit about the impact of poverty on education, issues with not having parents involved with all of the normal poverty, and I'm wondering, like, obviously you're using the FSA score, you're addressing like standard curriculum issues. Are you guys addressing social issues within the school that help that?
Yes, so one of our 3 goals that creating mentorship opportunities is specifically for that. So we recognize that some of these students, they don't necessarily have the hardest of home issues, they don't have necessarily the hardest of academic issues, but they do have some kind of social impact because of that. Either they came from a different community and there's this disconnect with the community that they're in, or they just don't feel like they belong, or they kind of recluse. They become recluse because they feel like they can't succeed. And so we actually specifically, the educators that we work with recommend particular students to us. They tell us particular students that either have those issues and need assistance, or those quiet students that they really need to open up in order to get them to more actively engage in their education and in their home life. And so we have these volunteers that come in. We actually had this incredible experience about a month ago at the end of last semester, where we had a particular volunteer that had developed a really close relationship with 2 students in particular. And at the very end of the year, we did our family night, which is what we do every semester, at least once, if not twice. And they actually came up to her at the end and were giving her hugs and didn't want her to go. And it was a really emotional moment because we created that mentor-mentee relationship. And not even that, I'd go one step further to call it a big sister, and little brother kind of relationship. And that means a lot to them. And that's really brings them out of these social issues because, yes, we recognize not everything is tied to poverty, not everything is tied to classes being hard. There's a lot of factors that go into why these schools are the way that they are. So that we do try and address that with the creating mentorship opportunities. And we think that it's working so far. Yes?
Yeah, there's a couple of stuff that you saying, you mentioned something a moment ago that when the school brings up, then you will listen to So are you training the teachers as well? Because poverty is not going to change even as you show up. It sounds like they're still going to need you to be a service.
Right. Let me go back to that. So what I mean by that is not that we're